working? Yes, it is. Yes, perfect. So I'm going to call us to order, and we'll start with a roll call. Mr. Sarsfield, if you'd like to just do a quick roll call.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor, I'm not used to seeing you in person. Please forgive me. Councillor Croson.
You she?
Here.
I'm here.
I apologize. Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Councillor Dodick.
Here.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
I won't notice that you got all the men right.
So all the members of the committee are in attendance and quorum is established.
Perfect. We'll start with the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We start first by adopting our agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting on February 23rd, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask you or the City Clerk, are there any additions, changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Ask my colleagues if there's anything they'd like added to the agenda. Always ask, just in case somebody's got something up their sleeve. If not, I'll call for the vote. Thank you.
Question's been called. All in favor? Agenda is adopted. We move to the consent agenda, which has the minutes from our last meeting in January and the status of initiatives. We have a motion from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on January 26, 2023 be approved, and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign, actually should be Chair and City Clerk, instead of Mayor and City Clerk, be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved the status of initiatives for February 23rd, 2023 be received as information. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Chair. And I take it we're going to make the necessary alterations to the motion. And as amended, I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Perfect. We have a consent agenda.
I had a question on the consent agenda, if you don't mind.
Apologies, Councillor Carlson. Go ahead.
No problem. I see that we have at least added, at least since I reviewed it last, some of the policies. Is this something we should be setting dates for? Is this something that's in the queue for the clerk's office to bring forward to the committee?
I emailed City Solicitor Lowen, because there's a couple there that are coming from the City Solicitor, some of the early ones, and asked if those are still vital to come forward and to set a date. So I've asked, he is out of the office this week, so we won't hear until after this meeting. And some of the others, some of the policy ones, I have to have a meeting with the city manager because we're not seeing some of these brought forward from some of the departments. So I will be sitting down with Mr. Brierley to see if we can't get some of these moved forward. Some of them should be easy. Right now, you can buy cannabis with city money. You just can't buy alcohol. We probably should change that policy.
Thanks.
I was thinking we wouldn't be buying cannabis.
Oh,
either,
right.
but, you know, we can argue that one. So we are working on trying to get some of those forward because it is a responsibility to have all policies reviewed in this term.
Thank you. And so we will have, hopefully by the end of this term,
Hopefully by the end of this term, we will get all the policies that are to us. We'll also make sure the ones that go to audit, et cetera, because there's some that go to other SPCs. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
But yes, it is something we're working on. All right, that is the consent agenda, which now moves us on to our presentation. Just for those in the audience, how we will proceed on this is City Administration will give their presentation as in the agenda. We will then open it to the public. We have some people already in the queue, but anybody in the audience who wishes to speak can, of course. You will have up to 5 minutes, which flies faster than you think. And then we will go to questions from council. If members of the public are addressing the committee, please make sure your address is to the councillors, to the committee, and we'll ask any questions of the staff that might arise. So we will start with Ms. Motz on the Fee Assistance Program, Policy CC 56 rescindment. Ms. Motz, the floor is yours.
Wait for her to pull up the presentation.
Have fun technology.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today as we discuss our proposed policy changes to the Fee Assistance Program currently managed by the Community Social Development Department. Next slide, please. Community Social Development took over management of the Fee Assistance Program in late 2021. At this time, the Fee Assistance Program provided Lethbridge residents who face financial barriers with the opportunity to participate in recreation and cultural programs and activities at a subsidized cost. In July 2022, Lethbridge City Council approved funding for the Fee Assistance Program to include the provision of free bus passes until the end of 2022 for new refugees arriving to Lethbridge. All of these program processes are currently being managed under the CC 56 Council policy, which does not include the provision of refugee bus passes and further developments that were finalized during the 2023 to 2026 operating budget deliberations. Next slide, please. Given the success of the one-time funding provided last July, an initiative for ongoing subsidized transportation services was requested during the 2023 to 2026 operating budget deliberations and ultimately approved with a total budget of $200,000 annually. This continued change in scope and funding prompted the need to review and revise the current fee assistance policy in order to ensure that it was comprehensive and relevant, which has led to our proposed request to move from a council to an administrative policy. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the current council CC 56 policy, including eligibility criteria pertaining to the cultural and recreational services only, and outlines responsibilities between Lethbridge City Council and administration. The current City Council responsibility outlined in this policy is the approval of an appropriate level of funding. The proposed administrative policy will not change this responsibility, as the annual funding for all fee assistance programming is now approved, and any additional funding requests due to service uptake will continue to be brought forward to City Council for approval as needed. Next slide, please. Here we have an overview of the proposed administrative policy, which outlines fee assistance into a two-stream program to include the new transportation services and ensure clarity between each primary service. Following this two-stream approach, eligibility criteria and awarding of funding and respective timelines are outlined for each, and the responsibilities section begins with the applicant and then into administration, including all departments involved in the fee assistance program processes. This proposed change will not impact the current role of Lethbridge City Council approving the annual fee assistance budgets and provide greater clarity on roles and responsibilities for both the applicant and administration. It also provides the ability for administration to complete ongoing assessments and adjustments to the new funding stream without needing to continually seek council approval, with the ultimate goal of maximizing this investment in our community and mitigating risk. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Motz. Before questions, we will hear from the public because that might change some of the questions. So Councillor Carlson, though I know you're quick on your button, we'll wait for a bit. So we do have a few people in the queue on the list. Anyone who's not on the list may also ask to speak. First, we have Ms. Park. If you'd like to come up to the podium, as I mentioned, you have 5 minutes. And welcome. Thank you for coming out on such a cold day.
You have to forgive me a little bit. I'm not used to public speaking. My name is Lorna Park. I am here today on behalf of myself and of the many people who call Lethbridge home, who are unable to speak for themselves, to request the City Council of Lethbridge review the fee assistance program that is in place for low-income residents of Lethbridge to enjoy the benefits of recreation offered by the city. Programs offered at senior citizens groups, ice rinks, city pools, etc., are very important to the well-being of individuals, but are unaffordable to many low-income seniors and single-wage earners. When I applied for funding in November of 2022, I was shocked when my application was denied. I have been approved for this program for 5 years without problem. My wage, all of which is government pensions, did not change in June 2022 or November 2022. These pensions have been slightly increasing about 6% each year due to inflation and cost of living increases, but the City Fee Assistance Program policies guidelines of $25,920 gross net income as the maximum to be allowed for assistance was not increased. In June 2022, I received funding, but in November 2022, I was denied because my wage was $160 above this guideline. The city has not changed this guideline for several years, but did increase the cost of enjoying the city rinks and pools by 6% in September of 2022, making the need for assistance even more necessary. It's a blow to a person's ego and pride to ask for monetary help at the best of times. But when you have been a very independent person all your life, it is even harder. The pools are my best opportunity for overall exercise due to mobility limitations, and is also an important social event. At 80 years old, being able to participate in a pool exercise program, to keep on moving when walking is sometimes difficult, pride must be put aside. I am asking the city to increase the maximum amount of the gross net income, which has not risen in step with the 6% cost of living increases to the pensions, and to reflect the cost of living and the ever-rising inflation. I respect the fact that there has to be a guide to the amount of assistance that can be given, but circumstances should also be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? All right, so then we'll move into the next part, which is questions from council. And I have a feeling, Councillor Carlson, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I'll address Ms. Parks. I hope it was Parks? Park. Thank you, Ms. Park. Park's question first. Under the, through you to Ms. Motz or designate, under the current policy, if a person is eligible for, I think it's income supplements through the province, they are eligible. So I'm just not clear if Ms. Park was denied for what kind of reason someone would be denied if they're already getting government assistance for low income.
I was told after going through many booths, looking how to speak to somebody, that my income was my factor. And my income is only pension. And I know that they have...
And, sorry, thanks, Ms. Park, if I could maybe get Ms. Mott. And unfortunately, if you do want to, if somebody directs a question to you, we'll need you on the microphone for anyone online, or they can't hear. No, thank you very much.
So in the current CC 56 policy, it states that in order to qualify for funding, a family or individual shall meet the following criteria, which states having income that is below Statistics Canada low income cutoff, or have proof of involvement in some other programs. When this program was moved into community social development, our understanding was that there was a bit of a greater variability in terms of eligibility, and due to the direction that we received from senior leadership, we had begun approving or denying applications based solely on Stats Canada LICO guidelines. We agree that they are behind. They have not been updated for a number of years, and could look at making some scope changes to that if that was requested.
Okay, and how often do they update the LICO? Because especially in this turbulent inflationary period, those are probably going to change.
I believe that the last time they were updated was in 2019, so they are quite outdated.
How would we go about updating that?
We actually looked into other standards that could be used for this policy that were more relevant, and we found that unfortunately this is the gold standard that is used across Canada, and there are not a lot of other options. However, we also discussed putting in a threshold where if you were within 10% of the LICO standards that you could be eligible for these services. So that's something that we could look into.
I think that something like that, a 5 or 10% variance, I think would be appropriate, especially since they don't update them for 4 years. So I'd appreciate that. Second question. Council approved C 7.1 in our previous operating budget deliberations. I believe it was Councillor Croson who brought it forward. Up till then, we had been approving $90,000 a year, I believe. Was it 90?
90s for fee assistance, 200,000 for transportation.
Okay, so this 200,000 is completely for transportation. Do we still have the 90 for, so there, it's
That's
actually,
correct.
there's 290,000.
That's correct.
Is there any ability with the change moving to administrative that they could sort of be combined? Because say one is over subscribed and the other is undersubscribed, rather than having a carryover, we may be able to shift dollars in between them. And I don't know if it was your resolution at budget, so I don't want to jump on your intent.
I understand that would actually make sense because it's really hard to do recreation if you can't get to recreation. And so the two go hand in hand, depending on the individual who has a requirement. So if the administrative policy had that as part of it, I would have no issue, and I don't think the public would either. But
We could certainly incorporate that into the administrative policy moving forward and follow regular processes that when we start to see that we're getting to the bottom of the funding pot for the year, bring that back to council for further direction.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Middleton Hope?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just got a couple of clarification points, I think, and a few questions. So, Ms. Motz, just so I'm clear here, what you're asking for is to extend funds from one program, Stream A at $90,000 per year, pair those funds with the approved $200,000, which is Stream B, and already budgeted for and available for transit, support, and recreation. Is that correct? So you're trying to blend two streams of funds and two initiatives into one?
They weren't before we just raised that question with them.
What?
They weren't until we just raised that question with them. That's not what they came for. They came just to rescind the policy and create an administrative policy. We've just given them a new suggestion.
So you're answering for her that, in
Yes.
fact, they okay, good. All right, so in fact, they weren't up until now.
They weren't up till now, but
You are going to?
we're suggesting it's a better option to match what the public needs.
Good. All right, so where do you propose that the additional $90,000 is coming from? Is that from,
Oh, that's already approved in the last budget too.
that's the council contingencies?
Nope, it's an approved thing that's been two council terms.
200,000 is?
Nope, no, the other one's been there for two council terms. It's already there.
90,000. Okay, so the 290,000 now is for this purpose?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, I guess the only other question that I have, and I'm going to ask you because apparently you've got the answers.
Sorry, Ms. Motz.
So we're allocating these funds, I get that. Are we relinquishing control over the funds by allowing the policy from administration to override the policy from council?
That's a decision we have to make, because that's what they're asking. They're asking us to rescind our policy and move it to administration. They would still be reporting back, as they do with any other policy, but we have to determine if we are comfortable recommending that to council or not. That's the decision before us.
Good. Then you've answered my questions, all three of them. Thank you.
All right. I'll move on to my question, and actually I'm going to ask Councillor Carlson, because I know you were instrumental in getting this policy created in the first place. Back in the day, would you be comfortable if this becomes an administrative policy when originally you created it as a council policy?
I think it makes much more sense, in my opinion, as an administrative policy. Council approves the dollars, sets the parameters, but we don't want to be in the weeds on every decision, so to speak. So I think handing it over to administration, we've approved the $290,000 per annum now, and we're hopeful that administration can administer. So that, it would be my suggestion. But I do appreciate Ms. Park coming up here and saying that there are some issues, and I think administration has heard and may make some tweaks to make it a little more equitable. So I'd appreciate that.
So continuing on that, Ms. Motz, we're obviously behind on updating some of our council policies. What is the rules within administration for how often policies are updated? So something like Ms. Park's concern is addressed. What is, how can the public then have a say with council policy? They can come to us. Administrative policies, what route would they have, and how often are they updated? Oh, sorry. Mr. Sarsfield says that's actually his question, so don't worry.
I can defer the answer to someone else if they so wish. But typically what the rule is for council passed a resolution saying they wish to review all of their policies within their term. So once every 4 years, we review all the 60-odd council policies. Terms of administration, we have approximately the same, maybe a bit more. And they just come up for review whenever there's a change in scope, change in direction, or there's just a change in leadership. So some of them have been reviewed almost annually, and some haven't been reviewed for a number of years just because there's been no change. So, but typically they'd be reviewed when there's a change in scope.
Continuing with that question, how would something like Ms. Park's concern be addressed if it's an administrative policy?
We would expect to be able to address concerns like that quite promptly. There would need to be approval in place from our city manager to have that administrative policy change confirmed. However, I think the member of the public who spoke today is a great example of how we can better respond to the gaps in these services that are being provided under an administrative policy.
And what reporting would be back to council? Will it just be on the money, or would it be on how useful the program is?
We could report as directed today. The current council policy indicates that we report a general update annually, and so if that is council's wish, we can continue to do that.
All right, Councillor Dodick?
Would that reporting include applicants accepted, applicants denied?
I don't believe that that was included in the annual report this year, but we could include that in future annual reports, yes.
I think it might be helpful just to give us a sense as to, is it 20% being able to take advantage of it versus 99%? So I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I don't see anybody else making one final question. Right now, the award is $150 per person biannually. Will administration be looking at increasing that? Is that effective? If you're looking to more combine the two, is it going to work? Because I'm thinking there's a lot of classes that $150 is one class or one set of classes. So is that sufficient?
With the new direction today to combine the funding streams together, we could certainly look at that.
All right. I see no one else in the queue. Is there any more questions from any members of the committee? Oh, Councillor Carlson, please go ahead.
Just one, and sorry, Madam Chair, if this was already addressed. When was the 150 set? Was that when we set the original policy? I think that might be something as well to look at indexing or...
That is my understanding. This policy was effective on January 1st, 2022, the current revision of it.
And was it still 150 per...
Yes, yeah, per person biannually.
Prior to that?
That is my understanding, yes.
That might be something we'll want to review as well, is that might need to be indexed, because as we increase costs for things and increase costs for some of our service providers,
yeah,
that might need to be looked at too. Thank you.
One final question. Ms. Park, having heard the conversation, knowing that they might put into the policy a 10% leeway, et cetera, might increase the cost, are your concerns addressed today? Yeah, please come forward to the mic so we can make sure you can be heard. We're just going to make you get your exercise today.
I wasn't going to do this, but I feel for myself, and I can only speak for myself, like I said, my income is my pensions. And it is, it's very hard to ask for help. And on a very flat no, with no explanation other than my wage, if you want to call it a wage, went up, and it was only due to the increase in pension. The city, whoever was in charge, did not take into consideration the fact that it is solely pension. I do not work out other than that. I'm 80 years old, you know, with limitations, where am I going to work? And I think there has to be a little bit of personal ability to talk to somebody. I spent most of November and half of December trying to find somebody to talk to about this. And it was through a very generous and kind lady at the 211 who pointed me in the right direction, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, so that's another thing, is making sure there's a person responsible for this grant, that people know you're the face of this, and so somebody to talk to.
You need somebody to talk to, not just a no. You need to be able to explain and ask what direction to go to.
Thank you very much, because yeah, if we build in the flexibility and having the person that is there. So I see no more questions in the queue. So the motion before us, certainly administration has heard our concerns, and will take that into account when they build their administrative policy, but that is within their purview. The motion before us comes from Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council rescind City Council Policy CC 56, the fee assistance policy. Councillor Dodick.
Yeah, I think the questions and answers actually addressed the concerns. So basically, this resolution is just going to recommend to council that it be turned over administratively, and that becomes more of a sort of person to another person interaction, rather than just can I apply for this? No, you can't kind of situation. So that's my opening and my closing.
I don't see anybody else who's in for debate. Oh, maybe no. So the question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. That will go forward to City Council in March. All right, we move then to our next item on the agenda, which is a submission, which is from Councillor Palladino. Well, Councillor Middleton Hope is bringing forward the motion, but Councillor Palladino is here to answer any questions regarding it. And it's about increases to the deposit and signature requirements for City of Lethbridge municipal election candidates. All right, so we will start. There's no presentation on it. I don't think anybody in the community is wishing to speak on this one, or is anyone wanting to speak on the signatures? Thank you. All right, so we open for questions. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Palladino, if I can. Thank you, Nick, for coming down today. When this was presented, can you remind me of the rationale? The intent?
I can. It was presented back in December at a council meeting before Christmas, and council directed that governance SPC take care of it, or at least come back with a recommendation. During the election in 2021, the city had 33 candidates run for mayor, or for councillor, and 6 ran for mayor. And shortly after the election, there was talk around the difficulty of hosting forums and open houses, and people were getting tired, or it was onerous to go to all the 33 videos that were out there, and others complained about the amount of lawn signs and unsightly, signage, election signs. What else? So this is in an effort to sort of stem that down a bit.
And thanks for that, Councillor Palladino. Because I took some time to mull, and I don't see the small changes. It was $100, $250 to A, be onerous, and B, be onerous enough to winnow down that pool. So I'm kind of torn between, do you put in a much higher number in dollar amounts and signatures to try and dissuade that, or do you just carry on, keep calm and carry on? and not charge people to run. Because I would hate to dissuade. It was part of my discussion back when this was passed, is that I would hate this to dissuade anyone from running with a true intent of serving or raising awareness of a platform issue or something. So I'm struggling between either keep it as is or put a very punitive amount out there that really winnows down the pool, but that seems to fly in the face of democracy to me.
I mean, I struggled with it too. Is it enough of a deterrent to, and then what's, are you cutting somebody out who really wanted to run for council? But I always come back to, if you can't get 25 names on your nomination paper, you can't get 4,000 votes that you need to get your money back. And the other thing is, you can get your money back. When you're elected, the deposits are refundable, so I'd like to banter it around a bit if there's,
And agreed. Thank you for that. Because one of the things I thought was increasing the number of signatures. Say to run for mayor, you need 1,000. To run for council, you need 100. That sort of winnows out the people just taking out a flyer, I guess, on it. But then they don't need to pony up any extra dollars. So that's something I was thinking about. Just on a quick aside, lawn signs and election signage. I've heard that too, and I may be bringing something forward to ban lawn signs except on private property. So that'll help somewhat.
I thought about that too, and whether or not we should include it in this proposal, but I think that comes under a different, like Public Works or something, signage and right-of-ways. I think the manager can probably take care of that administratively, but yeah.
And Councillor Carlson? For now? For now. Okay. Councillor Dodick, you're next in the queue.
It's apparently one of the candidates in 2021 had dropped out, so it's actually 32 candidates, just for clarification.
Touche.
Yeah, but in the second whereas, I'm just curious, where you say a large number of candidates is overwhelming. So in terms of the actual numbers, is overwhelming more than 100 or less than 100? I'm kidding. No other question.
Councillor Middleton Hope, do you have a straw question as well, or a real question?
What was the comment that I made to you just a minute ago? Yeah, so there's two additional things. It's more of a statement for debate, but there's two things. There are costs that the city clerk's office has to incur, and the more numbers of candidates that come forward, the more work that they have to do. The impetus behind this, as I understand it, is to suggest that some of those costs may be offset by requiring candidates to pony up if they want to apply. The second is, this is certainly consistent with other cities across the province of similar size and or larger. There is only, I believe, one city that does not have a requirement for a certain number of signatures and that there's a fee associated with it. So I support the initiative. I think it's certainly commensurate with the times that we're in.
All right, so we're still on questions. Councillor Carlson, you're back in the queue.
And thank you. I do appreciate that. I think when this was presented, if there was 32 candidates who ran and ponied up the $100, that's $3,200. I think Councillor Palladino said 80% of them will get their $100 back. So it's really about $700. Is that
Madam
really
Chair, I do have the numbers if you would like to hear the accurate
you've got
numbers.
numbers.
Okay.
Excellent. Is that enough to defray the?
So if we would apply those fees that Councillor Palladino is proposing, for mayor, there were 6 candidates, $250. 2 of them would have got their fee back, and 4 of them would not have got their fee back. With regards to councillors of 32, 18 would have got their fee back, and 14 would not have. So the total would be 23 returning fee and 2,400 not returning fee out of 4,700, so almost 50%.
So we would have profited by $2,400 if my math is correct?
We would not have returned fees of $2,400.
That's a nicer way of saying it. And is that going to cover your costs that incurred that may this, I'm assuming doing something like this actually causes more work rather than less work? Because it's not fewer work, less work.
With regards to an election, we wouldn't look at work or cost recovery. We would look at a fair and democratic process. So whatever council wants in the bylaw, we would.
Agreed. But would making these changes cause any extra administrative work?
So with the changes that just went through the Election Act, you can now start campaigning and filing your papers January 1st. So if we were to get a check January 1st, it would be stale dated by the election in October. So, and Mr. Sarsfield can probably explain this better than me, we would probably hold it in trust. So I will hand it over to David if you want more detail on that.
So we have contemplated in how it would work, but we would probably do as what she described, is put it in, deposit it, hold it in a trust account, wait till the results till after the election, determine whether we continue to hold the money or return the portion that applies.
Okay, so these changes would not cause any further administrative work? Because I'd hate to say that this could recoup some of the costs of the election, but actually it adds costs to the election.
It would be a little more work for sure, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Hilford, as you're here, or Mr. Sarsfield, are our signatures checked? I know, Ms. Hilford, before you came here, you worked at Calgary. There's 100 signatures. Are those actually checked by city clerk to make sure they're actual people? Or like even the 5 that we have, are they checked?
I'll defer to David.
So what is interesting is if you actually look at the nomination form, there's only very specific reasons we can decline someone's nomination. For instance, one which is new, like within the last election, is they actually have to sign the form, sign the declaration. Before, if someone produced a nomination form which was unsigned without the declaration saying everything is true, we would still have to accept it and allow that name to go forth. So the number of signatures, although that is a requirement, is not necessarily a reason why that person's name cannot go forward. So no, we do not check the names. We do tell all the candidates or potential nominees to get more than 5 or whatever the number happens to be so that there is no question. The reason being is because someone else from the public can come and view those names, and they may do so and take it to court. It would not be in the position of the returning officer or the city clerk to do that.
Want to get more? Okay. Would anything prevent me from paying for signatures? If I need to get 100 or 50, could I give everybody who signs $55 for signing?
So there is.
Exactly, it does.
So there is nothing preventing you from doing that, other than your moral compass.
And
What if you promise them a puppy?
yes, instead of money. I mean, it used to be beer. That's why you can't, in some places, give beer on election days because that's how they used to get voters, right? Either Mr. Sarsfield or Ms. Hilford, is there any research on how any of these affects election? Has anybody talked to a political scientist or any researcher and wondered if this happened, what is the effect? Do we have any research on that?
We did not consult.
Point to ask, but you haven't seen any,
I haven't seen any. David?
Like we've talked, but nothing officially in terms of research, and there's been no indication that it impacts it one way or the other.
All right. My question queue is empty. Is there any other questions, any other information people would like before we go into debate? Councillor Carlson.
I guess I don't know if I'm ready to debate, or just, if we can just sit and chat.
We can sit and chat. This is
Yeah,
committee. It can
is
be
a
as
committee, which
informal as
makes
we
it
want it to
easier.
be.
Oh, okay.
You debate with yourself, he'll chat.
Counselor,
Palladino. It's still
Yes.
Palladino.
yeah, Nick. Are you thinking this is still something you'd like to champion or bring forward? Is there any other thoughts? Like, honestly, to me, I think the numbers presented aren't going to make a hill of beans. They're, as the chairman said, show up to the bar one night, sitting with a group of 10 friends, you can get 10 signatures, and then walk around the bar, get another 15, and the $100 may not
I was
be
going to a
returned.
ball game, not a bar.
Oh, you went,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, taking me out to the ball game. That's right, went to the Bulls game.
I would hope.
And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are right now. I don't see this having a material impact, except for maybe deterring somebody from actually running.
You don't want to make it such a deterrent that the applicant or the candidate wouldn't submit an application or a nomination. So to get your foot in the door, so to speak, I think it's a good start, and in a year or two, or an election or two down the road, if they want to, I won't be around, but they'll be raising, if they want to raise it, that's fine, or lower it. But right now, I think we can trim that 33 down without it being too punitive.
Hey, Councilor Middleton Hope?
Thank you, and I would hope that those who decide to stand for public office would have the honesty and the integrity not to go into a pub and start soliciting votes. I think we've probably gone well beyond the 100 years ago when that was a practice. So I would have certainly a whole lot more confidence in today's applicants. So I rely on the honesty of the applicants. I think this is a good start. This is the direction that I think we should be going to encourage a demonstration of commitment to public service. And I think this in part, not solely, but this in part provides us with a measure in that direction.
For the record, I'm not sure that getting your friends to sign while out having a beer is either dishonest or unethical.
They're buying you.
All right, is there any further debate on this? We're into debate now. Oh, yes, let me share the motion so you know what you're actually debating. So this is coming forward from Councillor Middleton Hope, because Councillor Palladino is not actually part of the committee. Be resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that City Council change the requirements to Bylaw 5803, election bylaw, as follows. Number of eligible elector signatures for councillor and for mayor to 25 and 50 respectively. Deposit for councillor and for mayor to $100 and $250 respectively. And further, that the city solicitor be directed to make the necessary amendments to the election bylaw 5803. That is what has been presented as the motion. Councillor Dodick, I think you have a debate. Okay, you do get to open, Councillor Middleton Hope, or unless that was your open earlier.
That's opening and closing, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Dodick.
No, I will not be supporting this. I understand the reason for it, and everything expressed in the whereases, say for the number of candidates, I can agree with. I appreciate it can be overwhelming to the electors. Signs are problems, getting people to, to forums and having limited time to speak. But to me, it comes down to if it even prevents one person from being able to seek elected office, I can't support it. I know with the 32 candidates that there were a number of them that, 14 didn't meet the threshold as to this proposal. But in their own way, they provided something to the campaign that I don't think I want to lose in the city of Lethbridge. So I appreciate the resolution. I just can't support it.
I won't be supporting it either. I think most of you know I'd be much more interested in setting an upper limit of what can be spent in a campaign than actually causing somebody to not run because they don't have financial resources. And so to be as open as possible. People run for a lot of reasons. Some run knowing they'll never be elected, but they run just to get an issue out there. Some run because they want to be part of the process. And for all the various reasons that people run, I can't support this. So I will not be voting for this motion. Councillor Carlson, have you said all your pieces, or you don't have any debate either?
My pieces have been said.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Then I guess we call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? All opposed? That fails 3-1, so it will go forward to City Council, who will have final decision as not being recommended. Okay. That brings us to the close of our meeting, so I will unilaterally adjourn us. Thank you all, and stay warm.
Wanted to thank Councilor Nick Palladino for attending.
Yes, it was cold. You could have stayed home, but then you wouldn't have heard us.